This piece really about what it feels like to be a father and what it feels like to have a son, and I was writing about my son.
When he played me the piece of music, which became the basis for the entire score, I thought it was absolutely perfect and captured the emotional qualities of the film that I wanted. And it was at that point that I told him that it was actually a large-scale science fiction film. I hadn't given him any clues about that.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. This is Aisel once again with the soundtrack movie review, and this time I'm going to be talking about Interstellar. I know in my last video I briefly mentioned it because of course I was talking about Hans Zimmer, and once again I'm talking about Hans Zimmer. This time it won't be any of the brown iconic noises, so no loud horns. Well, scratch that, there is loud horns, but we're not going to be talking about those loud horns. We're going to be talking about the Interstellar theme, which is actually very popular and has been used in a lot of the recent TikTok trends, and honestly one of my favorites as far as like when people have big brain moments. Of course, I honestly be feeling like I have a big brain moment, and that's the song I go to. But for example, yeah, I mean, with the Interstellar soundtrack, it's very different in comparison to when I was talking about Inception, almost like a 180. There's still a lot of minors. I think the biggest thing about Interstellar's film is that Hans Zimmer had to create a sound for space, and that's not exactly very easy to do. I know several other movie franchises such as Star Wars, you end up feeling a part of the world, and that's pretty much what you're trying to get into. But a lot of sci-fi movies, that ends up getting a little bit harder to do because you have to identify what it sounds like in space or what that's going to look like in the movie. So for Interstellar, it was classified in A minor and F major. Of course, that's a bit of techno babble with music theory for my little music heads. But as far as with Interstellar and those keys, he found, especially with the plot of Interstellar, spoilers, it's an apocalyptic situation. I totally butchered that, but you guys know what I'm saying, where the earth is pretty much dying and they can't grow sustainable crops and have too many dust storms. And even in that clip that I was showing beforehand where they were just going through the cornfield, it's pretty much all dry. It's not sustainable on earth anymore, so they have to find different planets and try to survive. So majority of this film, which is about 2.5 hours long, 3 hours, is pretty much in space. So you have to really set the scene. There's black holes, there's giant waves, so you have to really create space. So what Hans Zimmer decided to do is use an organ. Now, when I think of an organ, I'm thinking about Sunday service, Wednesday service, possibly the little Halloween theme that you hear every once in a while, like. But I never would have thought to use it for a sci-fi movie. You know, like as far as I'm concerned, with a sci-fi movie, I would go for horns, strings, and synthesizers. Of course, you know, the little robotic sounds. But Hans Zimmer just went in a totally different direction. He used an organ, and you hear it all the time. He lays on the organ in some of the tracks. I know one of the other tracks in the movie, Stay, he pretty much uses the organ the entire time. It starts off small, and then of course it builds up. There's still horns and brass and strings incorporated into it, but for the most part, he's just laying on that organ. Now, I'm tired of organs, not only because of PTSD from going to church, because I was forced to, but honestly because Hans Zimmer really laid it heavy on this movie with the organ. But it sounds absolutely beautiful and comes together with the film, so I'm not exactly mad at it. Another thing with this film,
like it's because this is all gonna get edited out anyway. I'm not even gonna worry about it. I'm gonna just keep on going. And
along with the organ, like I was mentioning about strings, he really creates space with strings, because a lot of times with strings, they have a bright sound, a bright, warm sound, especially since they're a wood instrument. So he's creating a space. The organ kind of just gives like the enormity of how much space there is and where they are in space near a black hole. So it kind of creates that like, wow, okay, that is a black hole. Of course, when you just hear black hole, it doesn't exactly associate, but when you hear the organ next to the image, it's like, And then, of course, with strings, it's the same thing. When it's accompanied with the organ, it pretty much completes what it looks like and how it would feel in space. Like, wow, I'm really in space right now. This is a lot. This is a lot to take in. This is a marvel. So that's another thing that I happened to notice in the film. And a lot of films are like that when they start using brass, the horns. I know I use a lot of technical terms because I'm a bit of a music nerd, but that's besides the point. As far as I'm concerned, with Interstellar, it's a very compelling work of cinema, and the soundtrack does it absolute justice from beginning to end. And who doesn't like the theme to Interstellar? Even though it's been since 2014, it is still used to this day, and I honestly still watch the film. Granted, not as much as I would like to, because it's still 3 hours long, but at the end of the day, Hans Zimmer, once again, kills it with another one of his scores, and you honestly might see more Hans Zimmer movies, well, Hans Zimmer scores in movies on my channel, which I'm not too sure what I will do for my next project, but hopefully I can find someone else besides Hans Zimmer who actually does a good bit of film. So, other than that, guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.